Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
For my friend Wesley, the caged bird dreams of freedom and moment when, vaunting wings, it can reach to heaven once more, escaping for time the worrisome concerns of world. There's no greater impingement to self-determination than a body which ignores intention and limiting desire does not acknowledge the aspirations of its spiritual host. In the face of challenge and disability, all must adapt and move on in what ways we can, but for one constrained by circumstance. Freedom has no equal bearing, and never does the memory of its independent resolve ever fade from the recollections of untainted youth. All must endure trials such as life, even when it seems some cope more than fair share. Thank God for glorified being and the restoration of our first estate. For those worthy of being numbered among the elect in Christ, surviving is opportunity to reinstate all to equal tenure with the cross of freedom, the blessed hope of eternal life, which accompanies the assurance of salvation through Yeshua, our Messiah. Hold down the party, brother, until we join you for Millennium celebration. Um, Welcome, friends. It's on a somber note that I come to you this evening. One of my really good friends had passed away. I found out it happened 2 days ago, but I found out late the evening prior, and so I've been kind of reminiscing, over time spent together. I had met Wesley when I was first injured. He was also injured, not, but maybe a few months prior uh, to myself, and then we both went to the same school. Went to Mercer University down in Macon, and so at that time, um, we kind of pooled together our resources and our um, support systems in order to manage, and to make it initially while being out there in the community and able to live independently. His family was from Macon, and so he had a lot of loved ones which were near and around him, and they opened their family and their lives to me and embraced me with open arms. And for that, I'm very grateful, because that was supremely instrumental in my even being able to make it through the initial, I guess, the first few months and years of being out there on my own, and the whole transition into disability. Um, and there's a whole point for me talking about this story, and I don't really have anything lined up. I didn't have a host. I mean, a guests lined up for this evening, and so I thought I would share with you a little bit of my personal life and story because I don't speak very much on my disability, even though, I don't in any way try to hide it or um, keep it from people in any way. I'm very outspoken and was an advocate involved in disability rights for a very long time until I discovered that, politics was a two-headed monster and basically the uh, two-party system, same side of the same coin, even though they project a whole different image. But um, anyways, and so when I was first injured, for those that don't know, I'm quadriplegic, which makes me paralyzed from the chest down, and only gives me limited use of my arms, my upper extremities. But my friend Wesley was one level higher than me in my disability. He was a C4, C5 quadriplegic, and he was unable to use his arms, and that one level difference was such a huge and profound thing, and I had no idea how much so until I met Wesley and we were able to live together and get to know each other. And we first met when I went to this place called Options Cottage, which is in Warm Springs. And if you are from Georgia or know anybody that acquires a traumatic, spinal cord injury in the way that I did, it's a good place to go. I spent 6 months there, he and I, and that's where we met. There was a house, they had a house there which taught us these independent living skills. And we shared three of the rooms. It was a four-bedroom house, and with the kitchen and the living room, everything was in the center, and the four bedrooms were on the four corners, and there was an adjoining bathroom in between. But there was a nurse that lived there, and she helped us if we needed aid in some way, but she wasn't there during the day. And so we had somebody get us up in the morning, and then we were left to our own. Sometimes we had scheduled physical therapy or occupational therapy of something of that nature. But a lot of times we had free time to kind of, just heal and process the whole um, transition into life with a disability, and to do what we wanted to develop our skills or whatever, to try to apply ourselves in some way to something other than just allowing the overwhelming situation to bear down upon us in such a way that it impinged our emotions or um, settled on us in such a way that it would lead to depression or anything of that kind of a weighty nature, which I was never one to deal with world in that manner. But certainly anytime you acquire a disability, especially as significant as what we had acquired, because all three of us were high level quadriplegics, and so we came together from different parts of Georgia, and we were to spend 6 months there. And um, there was also schooling for those that needed to finish their GEDs, or if they hadn't finished high school, or if they were young in that way. And um, but myself, I had already done 2 years of college and was finished with schooling, and so I spent the time that I was there visiting this lake, which was pretty close, near enough that we could ride out to it if we wanted to. And I would spend my time, out there writing poetry and I was already in the process of writing my second book, which was a poem about my travels and my break away from 9 to 5 and um, 4 years that I spent living in a van, just going across the country and spending days and weeks and months in different national parks with no commitment, absolute freedom. I mean, that was the most free that I'd ever been in my life. It was a time, before cell phones, and I would call my parents, collect from a payphone just to let them know I was okay and well wherever I was at. But for the most part, I was, on my own, and I slept out of my van, and I had my mountain bike and skateboard and snowboard with me. And the only time that I really settled down was in the winters, and I would um, come into Jackson Hole, Wyoming, sometime around October, and I would spend the next 4 months there snowboarding and working on the mountain, and that was the most incredible dream. The best experience of my life was traveling and finding Jackson Hole. There was a time when I had gone across the country. I took Interstate 10 all the way from Georgia to San Diego, um, and then took Pacific Coast Highway 1 up the coast to Seattle, Washington. And that was the most incredible drive, an experience if you never had a chance to do, and if you do ever have a chance to do, I recommend um, one, take all that in. It's incredible landscape, and in these lower part of California, in Southern California, there's all these showers which line the beaches, and so it's you can utilize them to for cleanliness if that's one of the things you needed to do. Which when I was living in the van, I didn't change clothes very often. Maybe once a week, and I didn't see the same people, and I was clean, so there was no need. And I would stop by at different people's houses because I knew people from everywhere. Having followed the Grateful Dead for 4 years, I met people from all states and all many different cities, and they were always inviting me to come through and to stay and share time, which I did. But so, anyways, this one time when I was left Seattle, went across to Montana and down through Yellowstone because it was at the beginning of fall and it was so very cold up in the northern states. And so I decided to head south. And when I came into Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is the first town that you reach once you leave Yellowstone, I spent a couple weeks in a youth hostel there in West Yellowstone, which was a really incredible experience, meeting people from all over the world who were, basically doing the same thing that I was doing. But anyways, I went south and ended up in Jackson Hole, and for 4 years I would spend my winters there because incredible. It was the most incredible landscape, and I limped in there kind of towards the evening, and it was so cold. But I met this guy named Vic. I don't remember his last name, but he took me up to Cache Creek, which was a place where we could stay, and there was, no hassle from the police or the park rangers. Not that there was much of that going on in Jackson Hole, anyways. But um, the next morning, I woke up and saw the Teton Mountains, and I felt like I was in one of the Walt Disney movies, or like in a fantasy. Those mountains are incredible. They're the newest mountain chain in the world, come right off the valley floor and shoot straight up into the air 14,000 feet. And Jackson Hole, as far as the mountain, for those that have never been there, never had chance to ski or snowboard there, it's the most extreme mountain in the continental United States, and it has a the longest vertical drop of any mountain, even greater than all of those that are found in Colorado. And so it's an incredible place to be and to hang out. And during the winter, there's more animals living there than there are people. In fact, the there's an elk refuge there where 15,000 elks come into Yellowstone, and they outnumber the people living there 3 to 1. And Jackson Hole, Wyoming, as a town, is right on the frontier of, there's the Grand Teton National Park. Right above that is Yellowstone National Park, and this huge elk refuge. And so between it and Yellowstone, there's nothing but just beautiful nature, the most breathtaking and incredible landscape one can ever imagine to bear witness to. And the animals are absolutely incredible as well, because Jackson Hole is one of the only places in the continental United States which has a population of bald eagles. And you will actually see 3 generations of bald eagles all nesting together in one tree, which, if you've never seen a bald eagle in the wild, and it's, in its own flight, and over the Snake River, which is when it was at that time clear, and you could see to the bottom, you could see the trout that you were actually fishing for. You could drink right from the river. So very clean. The air incredibly clean and crisp and cool and breathtaking. And so if you've never been there, if you ever get a chance, go and check it out. It's the most incredible place. And having spent 4 years traveling all across America, it was the only place that I ever wanted to settle down. There were other places that held me for short time, like Sedona, Arizona, very incredible. California, especially near the Sequoia National Park and Kings Canyon. I love San Francisco, the Redwood Highway, Garberville, anywhere up near Humboldt County, Eureka, that whole area, and Moab, Utah, the Zion National Park. All of that area is really incredible experience as well. But anyway, so it was during one of my travels that I actually met an individual that was going to a massage school in Humboldt County in Garberville in California. And it was way up in the mountains, and it was like this little hippie refuge where people went to learn shiatsu and polarity and Esalen and deep tissue massage. And so I decided to spend the summer up there, and having really liked it, I decided that I was going to get a degree and get certified in massage, and then just teach martial arts and snowboard, and that was my life. But while I was living there, I got a ride in a van with a couple of other people that were going to a Grateful Dead concert in San Francisco, and the van lost its brakes on a mountain road, and we went off a cliff and dropped 85 feet, and that's how I acquired my disability. I broke my neck on impact, and it was a month and a half later that I actually came to consciousness in Redwood, in a hospital in Redwood. And then because my parents were from Atlanta, they flew me out. Actually, the owner of the Home Depot, I don't know if it was Arthur Blank or one of the co-owners, but they donated their his jet to get me back to Atlanta, to be with my parents. And so I went, and that was where Shepherd Spinal Center was, and it's one of the most world famous spinal cord injury hospitals. And so I transitioned there and flew out there, and after 6 months of going through an intensive rehabilitation, and after they stabilized me, I died 3 times on the table. And it was a very difficult time for me and for my family. And I was with a bunch of other people from all over the world that had also acquired high level disabilities. They also have a um, one of the best known and most well respected traumatic brain injury hospitals there. And it's also a place where a lot of you know veterans go now when they are brought back to the states. If they can't handle the situation there in Walter Reed, they transport them and send them to Shepherd Spinal Center. But anyways, during that time, they actually allowed us to stay there long enough to where we were learning enough to manage our own care and um, to live out in the community as best as we could. And from there, I went home for a few months and realized that it was going to be just too much on my parents, and that if I didn't get out and learn to be on my own, it was going to end up killing them, because it was just too much. And my both of them were, just going through their own bouts of depression, and just trying to manage caring for me, and then also having their jobs, full-time jobs. And my mom quit her job for a while to stay with me, and through the first few months, until she saw that I was stable enough to be left alone for a certain time, because she was absolutely scared, about my fragility. And also, it took a little bit of time for me to establish some assistance, but I did get some help, and I got some community-based services, and they would send a nurse out to either get me up or to kind of sit with me for the first few months where I was learning, just kind of about disability and about myself, about the limits of what I could do and what I could. I was having to relearn everything, having to, learning to mess around with computers, because at that time my whole world was focused on the physical. Basically, I, didn't even watch TV very much at all, living in a van, following the Grateful Dead, and going from national park to national park, and then spending my winters in Jackson Hole. Everything was about skateboarding, mountain biking, or snowboarding, or writing poems. I had already published my first book by the time I was 22 years of age. But and it was while I was there in Garberville going to school at this it was called the Heartwood Institute for Healing Arts. And I spent I think 6 months there, and then we lost our brakes and went off mountain road, and that's when they flew me back. But after the 6 months that I spent there in Jackson Hole, in Atlanta at Shepherd Spinal Center, and the 6 months that I spent in this Options Cottage Independent Living Center, both Wesley and I, we moved back to Macon and to go to school in Mercer University, and and that's where we lived. We had this builder offer us a house and allowed us to live there for just $300, which was very cheap, and it was something that we could afford. And so a lot of people gave of themselves, of their time and their effort to enable us to, to live independently out in the community. I established some care, and because I returned back to school, I was able to get some of assistance through vocational rehabilitation, which I got a scholarship to go to Mercer, and what wasn't paid, Voc Rehab paid for. Um, and so I worked for a group called AmeriCorps while I was in school, and it was a huge blessing for me because not only did we get a scholarship and assistance for schooling through AmeriCorps, but all of the people that were around me, they were all willing and volunteered to learn about my care, and so all of them were able to help me out and to assist me through my day, and so that was a wonderful and incredible thing as well. And so until I graduated from school, um, Wesley and I lived there, and then it was after I graduated from Mercer that I decided to move to Winder near Athens, Georgia, to work on my master's. And I was at that time determined to be a vocational rehabilitation counselor and to help others to succeed in the same thing that I did. But I then began to have issues um, with some pain and with sitting, and so I had to delay that. Uh, we'll be right back, and I won't elaborate too much further. But all right, welcome back, everybody. I promise I'm not gonna elaborate too much longer on this, but there is a point for my whole story, and I know that some do appreciate when I kind of give some insight into my own life journey and experience, because I don't do a lot of that, and I've done probably hundreds of, if not, 1,000 shows over the years that I've been on the radio, and covering all the information that I have covered, because it's been since 2006 that I have been doing shows, and um, I appreciate that, Zipster and Wally, and those of you that appreciate me sharing, because I don't really share much of that world at all. And thank you for your kindness and your willingness to listen, because all of us have been touched by, or most of us at least, I would assume, have been touched by people that have gone on and have crossed over to that other side. And death is a really crappy part of life, and the whole suffering with getting old and having the body systems break down, and having to deal with something that is traumatic, and reduces one's capacity, and especially now with the Alzheimer's and the dementia and all that, it's crushing to see people lose their faculties, lose their abilities to function. But anyway, so what I was saying before the break is, after I moved up here to where I am now, wondering, I started having these pain issues from sitting, and so I had to limit myself in what I was doing and the way that I was living, because I was trying to, basically live the way that I did before I acquired my disability, and which was go 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 and do and nonstop and involved in being productive with all that I was doing. At that time, I was also fencing with the United States wheelchair fencing team. Which, if you don't know what fencing is, it's sword fighting, and so I practiced with them at the Shepherd Spinal Cord Injury Center, and we had practices every Saturday, and then my friends and I would get together and fight here at my house. And it's the most incredible sport. If you've never seen it, go to YouTube and pull up wheelchair fencing, and and if you've never seen it, it's really incredible sport. What we do as far as the wheelchair fencing, because there's no movement as far as no footwork, um, we lock into a frame and we measure distance. You reach out your sword, um, and it comes to the tip of the elbow, and so you measure out this distance. You set the distance, and then uh, the sword is plugged up to a wire that runs down your arm, and then it plugs up to another wire that goes to the box. And this box has a green and a red light on it. And so when you are fighting, the very tip of the sword has a blunt, a tip that it's like a button that when you hit your opponent, it depresses. And when it pushes in, it will set off the light. And the person that hits the other and scores in an area which is legal, which is from the waist up. In the two weapons that I fought, uh, one's called an epee, and this is the one. It's a stabbing sword, like a rapier, and the idea is to stab your opponent anywhere above the waist, and you score a point. And you can hit them in the wrist or the hand or the arm or the head, the chest, shoulder, anywhere above the waist. And we wear what is called these metal skirts, which ground out the electricity, that is fed to the sword. That when this tip presses in, it lights up this light. And so, in this particular weapon, um, both people can score if it's within like tenths of a second of each other hitting. And the way that a tournament works is that you have a pool where you fight um, every one of your opponents from the different countries. Because I fought both international and national tournaments, and so you would fight 5 points, and the first one to 5 points would win the bout. And then after everybody fought everybody else, it was like tennis. You would have the first person go up against the last ranked person, the second to the second last rank, and you would fight 15 points, and these were called elimination bouts. And once you lost, you were out of the tournament, and those that won their matches would continue on until there was a bronze and silver and a gold medalist. And there's in wheelchair fencing, there's three different divisions. C, which is for quadriplegics like myself, and there's not at that time there were not a lot of. It was just me and one of my friends who happened to live here in Atlanta as well. Um, he and I were the only quadriplegic wheelchair fencers in the United States. And then there's a uh, B group and level B, which is for paraplegics that have full use of their arms, but they are paralyzed above the middle of their waist. And then there's the A group, which is for paraplegics as well, but they're really low level paraplegics, and they may even be able to stand. Some of them can walk, have um, incomplete injuries, or for people that have like cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy or something of that nature that have full use of their bodies, but have certain kind of disabilities. And so, with these three groups, we would break down and fight with the different people that were from different countries that were each in these different kind of groups. And our group, the C group, was always small, but the A and B groups were always larger. And I learned from practicing with all of these guys that were both in A and B group, because having full use of their arms and full use of their upper bodies made a significant difference in their fencing and their aggressiveness, their range, and all of that. But we all learned, and I learned to hit people in the hand and the wrist as they were coming in. That was the closest area for me, and they would also, always have to offer that for me to me in order to attack me. And so because I was a lot slower, my strategy was to counter their attack and allow them to come in and just hit them on their way in. Because I didn't have very good balance and mobility, upward mobility, I couldn't necessarily reach my opponent's um, body, or I could reach the shoulder and I could hit them on their arm really good, and I could only hit them in their head if they were leaning in. So my strategy was to lean back, force them to come in, and hit them as they come in. And anyway, so I fought with the wheelchair fencing team for I think 4 years and won several medals. Anyways, it was a great experience. And so during that time, my friend Wesley was living in Macon, and I think he was going to Macon State College and whatever. But anyways, he just recently passed away, and so I am I just thinking back about his life and the fragility of life, and I have to really, I owe it to him, and I'm grateful to him for the early part of our lives when we lived together, because I learned not to be um, I learned not to be ungrateful for even the use of my arms, because with his level of disability, he, as I said, was not able to move his arms. Um, he wasn't as high a level as Christopher Reeves, which he also was injured just like 6 or 7 months after I was injured. But because his hands were caught up in the horse's bridle, he wasn't able to stop his fall, and because the horse stopped at the jump, he went over head first, and his hands were caught up. He was not able to stop his fall. He landed flat on the top of his head, and he broke the first four vertebrae in his neck, and that's why he was very high level disability. Couldn't even breathe on his own. Didn't even have feeling um, above his chin. Christopher Reeves didn't. And even with the amount of money and the fame and the fortune that he had, it was, people with his level of disability most did not even survive. And so for him to have done so for as long as he did was really remarkable and really a miracle. And it was a really incredible thing for the disability community, because it shined a light on what we were dealing with, what we were going through, and it also brought more attention and brought more funding to spinal cord injury research. And so it, ended up being a positive thing for the community. But and so when I lived with Wesley, I was able to even help him, because I could move my arms. I was able to help him in a lot of things that he needed to do. Even he would do things with what was called a mouth stick. He was able to, do things with that, and that's the way he typed on his keyboard for his computer, turned off the lights off and on, that kind of thing. But anyways, and so it wasn't until uh, just recently, that I've been able to, that I've really even thought about this thing because when I did the advocacy for AmeriCorps, and I was part of a group called ADAPT, American Disabled for Attendant Programs Today, we would always go to different parts of the country twice a year, and we would do these huge protests. It was we were so successful too because with you have 400 people in wheelchairs coming together to focus on. Sometimes it was the Republican National Conference, the Democratic National Conference, or certain senators, or certain, Republicans, Democrats, congressmen, whatever, even presidents and vice presidents. We would go in and take over their offices and surround them with our wheelchairs, and then not leave until our demands were met. And they would freak out because they didn't know how to deal with us, and they didn't want to have us arrested because we would always call in the media, all of the different um, news stations would show up to kind of, to cover our protests and our demands and what we were wanting. And basically, we have been fighting for community-based services so people don't have to live in nursing homes. And we believe that people should have choice, and rather than being automatically deferred into institutional setting, that they should be able to hire their own attendants to live freely in the community, and that anybody that acquires a disability, that they would want to still have as much of their freedom as they could muster. And so um, it's not that way in all states. And most of the funding for, for the disability community, for housing and things of that nature, go to these nursing homes and to these programs which do not cater to freedom and choice and opportunity. And so I worked with a group named ADAPT for a long time, and that's what we would do is we would try to get legislation passed. We had this law called MICASA, which was the Medicaid Community Attendant and Services and Support Act, and we were trying to get every state um, to implement it and to at least defer 50% of their funding to community-based services rather than nursing homes. And we were successful, especially in 1991, with the Olmstead Act. It was a Supreme Court decision which the Supreme Court sided with people with disabilities and said that the states couldn't just lock us up and lock us away and not provide choice. And so every state after that, they had to spend at least a certain amount of their funding for community based services, and they had to show a movement towards increasing that funding and to providing those services. So it was a really great win, and I really appreciated the my involvement with adapt and being a disability activist in the way that I was, and if it wasn't for the situation with having hip pain and being limited in sitting, I would still be involved in a lot of things that I did, even with the wheelchair fencing. But I at a point in my life, I had to scale back on my obligations to um, the things that I was doing for everybody else and focus on healing and focus on personal, you know, the quality of my own personal life. And it's a difficult thing to do because, you want to live as much as you can, you want to do as much as you can, but when you start dealing with pain, and this goes for everybody, it forces you to make changes to your life. It forces you to implement healthier choices. And so at that time, and also when I moved up here, I decided not to enter into school and begin that whole program until I had recovered and healed up to such degree that I felt like I would be able to do it and not put myself in pain to accomplish such task. And that's when I decided to um, I started working on my other books. I published my third book, A Different Way of Being. And then after that, 9/11 happened. And it was after 9/11 that I woke up to all of these things and started down the rabbit hole that so many of you have also gone down in investigating, 9/11 being an inside job, a government sponsored terror, how the shadow government funds the terrorists and then uses them as the boogeyman in order to further their own agenda for police state measures or the long term goal of martial law and a war that would not end in our lifetimes, as Dick Cheney said. Um, and they've been largely successful in doing those things, but I decided, after awakening to all that, that it was more important for me. It was important to try to awaken the American people that there were bigger things than just focus on one portion of the community. That really our whole lives, all of us, everything was at risk. Our way of life, our values, our freedoms, our country, that everything was at risk because of what the elites were trying to pull off and what they were trying to establish in the destruction of America and then the funding of world government and the uh, how international laws would then. We'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody. And once again, I appreciate all of you allowing me a chance to just kind of vent and reminisce a little bit on life and, just give you a little bit of an insight into what I've had to deal with to really even get to where I am. And and all of us are challenged in some way with life and being, and whether it's at some point, even if you're fully able now, at some point age will catch up to you, and it's just a matter of time before you're debilitated in some way. And so really all of us are just only temporarily able-bodied, and then we're forced to deal with challenges in life and being. Mine just happened to come when I was 24 years old, but I'm grateful to be here even now and to have opportunity to do all that I do. It's such a blessing, and I find still just so much joy in life and being, and it's incredible to wake up to new day and just to be part of creation. I personally find awakening to new dream every day and waking to new day. I'm just overwhelmed by the awesomeness of just experiencing, just even nature with the way that it all works. And it's incredible to feel the sunshine and the wind and see the birds and hang out with my cats and friends and family and loved ones and to share time and space with all of you in conversation and dialogue and to interact in the way that I do with a lot of you. You're a huge blessing on my life, really. And individuals like you, Link, and Blue, and Stephanie, and Watcher Ruth, and all those that I'm really close to, and you know that support me on my work. Know that I really I love all of you so very deeply, and I'm grateful. Really, I'm grateful to call you friend. But announcement, and I've been given message. Where they've asked the various hosts to let you know about these Christmas specials, and that are involved with the charitable donations. As you know, Revolution Radio is the largest listener-supported, commercial-free, and corporate-free radio network anywhere on the internet and anywhere on the earth, um, and that we do need your support in continuing to endeavor doing what we do and doing it in the way that we do. And one of the unique things about Revolution Radio, as it said in the broadcast, is that a lot of just the regular listeners, that have called in on the various different shows or that have been invited as guests to come on to Revolution Radio have successfully gone on to, become host on the various studios A's or Studio B, and have themselves become some of the largest shows on the network, which is an incredible thing, and something that doesn't likely happen anywhere else other than a network which is established and works the way that this one does, and so it's a very huge blessing. But the Christmas announcement. I'm going to read this real quick. The station is aiming to donate to selected charities over the festive season. If we surpass our monthly goal of $2,450 by Sunday, the 20th of December 2015, then the surplus will be evenly distributed to two very special charities. 50% will be donated to Toys for Tots, and the remainder will be donated to Meals for Vets. B. If the monthly goal has not been achieved by the 20th of December 2015, but has been surpassed by Thursday, the 31st of December 2015, the surplus will be donated to the station's local battered women's shelter. To help us to achieve the special goal of ours, the station is running a special offer. Any listener donating $25 or over during all shows or any show will receive a variable size pocket knife as gift. It is important to mention also that the donor would need to include their postal address and details in the notes section upon donation. It is also important to mention that Due to shipping and export restrictions, the gift applies to U.S. donors only. We should be grateful also for the host to please acknowledge that you have safely received this notice. I guess I wasn't supposed to read that, but anyways, I just got it before I got on show, so I didn't get a chance to really, read over. But one final part. Also, um, anyone that donates $75 or over will receive a 2015 uncirculated 1 ounce silver eagle, .99 fine silver in brilliant condition. And, those of you that can and that would like to support the station and also like to support us in our endeavor to support others, this is the season of giving. This is the season where we should, even though we should be doing this with every day and with every season, it's especially during Christmas time that people reflect upon, the kindness and the generosity. They get into the festive mood and are, a lot of the charities receive a lot of their annual donations from this one particular period of time. There's those strange mystery individuals that donate to Salvation Army where they'll wrap up a gold 1 ounce coin in a paper dollar or something of that nature. That always seems to happen. And that's an incredible thing. I think that we should really try to assist and help our fellow humanity, those that are in need, every day. But it's especially nice to see um, how people become increasingly generous over this particular time. And so, those of you that can, please do go to freedomslips.com, click on the donation button, and do what you can to, you know, to help out. And we will do what we can to help out as well. All right. I'm just going to reflect a little bit more. As I said, I didn't have really an agenda for this show or a particular anything that I needed to cover or needed to talk about. I wanted to also, you know, speak about and talk about um, just how we should really live every day as if it's our last, because you never know when something's going to occur and when you might not be here to say hello to another morning, and that really, even right now, each one of us, as we are here together in connection over the internet and you're listening to me, that something could happen of a very crisis type nature, or who knows, the elites have this whole agenda to bring forth nuclear war, and of anything of cosmic cataclysmic nature, whether it's a meteor strike or whatever. Who even really knows? I mean, anything insane can happen, and it seems like there is prophecy related to um, coming later asteroid impact, or these cosm, cosmological debris, or some kind of weird body, the return of the destroyer, wormwood, whatever it is what you want to call it, that we are not promised any more tomorrows, and that we should really embrace what we have of today to not only, you know, it really embrace our loved ones, and to ensure that they know that we love them. that so many of us go through our days where we don't even speak with or talk to our parents or our children or our significant others or our loved ones or those that are really close to us, really good friends, extended family members, far off family members that you may not have called in a very long time. You know, what if, what if today were our last day? And what if we knew we only had a week? I'm sorry, Fifi. Uh, if we only had a week remaining of life and being, what then? How would we approach this day and life any different? Would we do anything different if this was the last conversation that you could have with your loved ones? I mean, is there some kind of grudge or some kind of something that has driven a wedge between you and somebody that you love? And uh, perhaps you haven't talked to your father or mother or sister or brother or someone that is really close to you, that somebody that's a family member or a loved one. um, is there a reason? And if this was your last moment or if this was your last day, is what is dividing you and keeping you from conversing and keeping you from caring and sharing and loving one another, is it really worth holding on to? Because we have a tendency to do that. We also, as humans, we have a tendency to think that we're going to live forever, and that there's no impending doom. Even though I'm not, in this case, speaking of a doom and gloom situation, I'm just any kind of unforeseen event. It could be a car accident, because there are so many that lose their lives every day in a vehicle, um, or with all the insanity of ISIS. I mean, all the open borders, they're allowing all these terrorists to infiltrate our countries, and this goes across the board. The the riots and the incited tyranny and the I guess they called it the uh, Muslim uprising, or there was a different name for it. But anyways, it was where they were going to incite riots in all these Middle Eastern countries, and they were going to overthrow um, the different puppet dictators that they had set up and established, and cause people to rebel. And then they're going to arm the rebels, which these rebels are in large part the Al Qaeda forces that they armed and trained and utilized to overthrow the Russians during the Afghani war. I mean, that was a whole covert war, and that led to the fanaticism and the extremism that we find in that is now the rebel forces in all these Middle Eastern countries, because they basically came from everywhere to fight the war against the Russians during the that whole conflict and confrontation. And um, and so here they are very well experienced and trained uh, military, the kind of shadow government arm, that jack in the box that they can pull out of the closet anytime they need some kind of false flag event to go down. And um and and now the American people and the public of all the countries of the world, even the public in France and Germany and all these different European countries, the whole scheme that was laid out by Albert Pike, The whole setup of controlled opposition, and now we're going to allow the Western industrialized nations, the Christian world, to um, come into conflict and confrontation with the extremist Muslim fanatical Islamists, the jihadists, those that are wanting to fight a holy war. All that's been fabricated and established in order to create this crisis, to create this war, of which they have always, going back historically, funded both sides because they win either way. And of course, they always fund one side more than the other, depending on how they want the conflict to pan out, and how they want, what players they want to fall and what countries they want to crush. Um, and so this is what we've got going on here in America and the world. We have this Albert Pike with the whole setup of we need three world wars in order to establish world government and to um, garner approval for a new world order, a one world system. And they've succeeded greatly in doing so, in establishing um, the situation to where world conflagration can fall at the drop of a dime. They basically only have to instigate a few other things to really set everything ablaze. I mean, think about the whole World War One and what kicked all that off and what got all of that, what consumed all the nations. It was the murder of one Kaiser, you know, and then that is created the pretext for um, everybody to be involved in the destruction of their of peoples and nations, the decimation of infrastructure. I mean, it's insane, but one little thing like that was able to set it all off. And so, what is it this time? What's the trigger? Is it Syria? Is it um, is it um, Iran? I mean, because those are two things I can see right now that could be used as events to just set it all off. Is it Korea, South Korea, North Korea? Is it the Ukraine? Is it Georgia? And when I say Georgia, I mean over there in the Kazakhstan area. I mean, what is it going to be? We can see the lines being drawn. Is it going to be the crushing debt? Is it going to be the communist demand, China's demand for land as payment for interest on our debt? I mean, they basically can do whatever they want and say whatever they want and demand whatever they want. They've got us bent over, um, and they can do whatever they want. And it's a sad state that the elites have brought America and decimated our sovereignty and our um, and what was at one time a a comfort and the stability of our nation as far as financial and the stability as far as the quality of life and the peace and joy that so many other countries and other peoples from all over the other parts of the world that they came to America to share in and to celebrate and um, to seek out a better life and to chase the American dream that we were that once shining beacon on the hill, the lighthouse which parted the darkness and which gave guidance and direction to all the other nations and peoples of the world. They, even like with Vietnam before that whole that particular war and the incitement of that conflict, they basically modeled their own constitution upon our own, upon the habeas corpus rights and the right to bear arms and the right to um, fight against tyranny should government get out of control. And everybody at one time looked to us for guidance in fighting against tyranny and in having a republic and a way of life which allowed us um, to elect, even though that's been something that has been compromised for a very long time, but to elect officials and representatives um, to cater to the will of the public. And that whole dream is long gone. It's been so corrupted and so turned upside down that America is unrecognizable anymore as far as the political system, as far as the individuals that are driving the direction and deciding the will for us all. I mean, all of us as Americans. It's just so sad to see, even in my own lifetime, and I'm only 45 years old, but to see how, the Clintons and the Bushes and Obama, just those three groups of people, how they have destroyed and compromised this nation in such way that it's unrecognizable. They've taken us from, a surplus and being a nation of the one that loaned money to other countries, from that kind of a status to one of being broken by the insurmountable debt that has been levied upon us. There's no way that we're ever going to pay off the debt that we have incurred, and which is growing even every second by, you know, it's just unimaginable how much debt has been levied upon this nation. All right, we'll be right back, and thanks for listening, everybody. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment, and so I guess basically what I wanted to say this evening, and the point of this whole show for tonight was to really, think about priorities and think about what you're doing with your time and um, consider whether certain things that you're doing and the way that you're using it, um, whether it's productive for what you really want to accomplish and for what you really want to do in the time that you really have remaining, should you have something pressing or impending um, coming down upon you. Like, for instance, if you were diagnosed with cancer today and you knew you only had a certain amount of time, or if you were forced in some way to reconsider your priorities and regauge everything in your life and to in prioritizing those things, um, to give consideration whether something is really even relevant or really important, or is it truly important in the way that one is emphasizing it, whatever it may be, in your life, and especially in connections with those that you consider important, and if you don't consider them important, why not? What is it which is getting in the way of your relationship with your loved ones or your significant other? um, what is the thing which, because I see this a lot in children, because I feel like a lot of this generation, they waste a lot of their time, whether they're playing games um, or watching a lot of TV, or spending so much time on the computer, or if there's some, if their whole life is predominantly focused in a way, and I guess I really shouldn't be judgmental in this manner, but from the outside looking in, it seems like a lot of people waste a lot of time, just in general. And when I acquired my disability, and when I was forced to reassess my life and my capabilities and all that I had chance to do, and when I had to um, look again at my relationships with people and with things and the things that I was doing, and um, I had to kind of reprioritize everything in my life because I was given new chance. I should have died really in that accident. Because, I mean, how many people do you know or have ever heard of that have gone over a cliff in a vehicle, and having lost our brakes, we didn't just like topple over on the side and, just kind of roll off the cliff or tumble over. We lost our brakes, and for whatever reason, the driver tried to keep the vehicle on the road. And, looking back now, I think about, well, why didn't I jump up right there and grab the steering wheel and crash the vehicle into the side of the mountain? But, you can reassess all that later, and I don't know why I didn't do that immediately, because thinking about it now, that's what I should have done. And why I didn't do that, because I was so good at acting in the moment, but for whatever reason, um, I didn't. And we gained so much speed, and it was frightening. I was trying to also comfort the girl that was with us in the vehicle. It was, three guys, me and my friend, that were hitchhiking, and this guy and his girlfriend, and she was in the front seat with him. He was driving, and she jumped into the back with us, and I was kind of trying to calm her down and settle her down. And um, by that time, we had, I mean, it only took a few seconds once we lost our brakes for the van to accelerate to such manner that when he tried to, you know, hold on and hold on to the road and to make this one turn, we shot off like a meteor off the side of the road, broke through whatever railing and protection was there to keep people from falling off the mountain, and we were way up in the mountains. I don't even understand how anybody even saw us go off. And I just remember sailing, sailing for a certain time. Once we shot off the side of the cliff, all of us were kind of bracing for impact, and then we hit this tree, they said about 65 feet down, that stopped us just enough to slow our speed, just enough that we didn't explode on impact when we cratered into the side of the mountain. And I don't remember, tumbling or flipping over. I just remember crashing, and that was it. We crashed and that was it. And I remember my neck whipped back, almost like whiplash. And I remember trying to get up. And I remember when I tried to get up that I didn't have control of my limbs. And I knew then that was something was very wrong. Something was seriously not right with my body and with it acknowledging my wishes. And then I lost consciousness. And they told me that it took the emergency team from somebody saw us go off, which is just amazing to me. I don't know how they saw us go off. We were on a very isolated road, and there were not very much people living up there at all. It was like an hour journey east of Garberville, way up into the mountains. Um, and we were, there was a paved portion of the road, and then a longer portion also that was unpaved. And I'm not sure we even made it to the paved portion of the road. Actually, I think we did, because I remember going. We were on blacktop when we lost control. But anyways, we shut off sideways, and when they said it took the emergency team like 4 hours to get down to us, and then they had to move us to an area where they were able to helicopter us out, airlift us. And the driver, he had a permanent brain injury. He basically smashed into the steering wheel. And he and I, we had the greatest amount of damage, permanent injury. And we were in the same hospital, but I didn't really even know him that well at all. And and I woke up like a month and something later, I think a month and a quarter later, and then not being able to. I had at that time, I was on a ventilator because I wasn't able to breathe for myself either, and they kept trying to get me to eat, but I was in such pain that eating was the last thing that was really on my mind, and so I deteriorated, and my body just started consuming itself, and then it wasn't until they put a feeding tube in me, which was a nightmarish experience. I remember they stuck this huge tube down my throat, and they were like, swallow, 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 swallow. And it was so invasive. And I was already in so much pain, and I was like, how could they do this to me? I was already dealing with so much. But it was another one of those life-saving procedures that they have to do when your body shuts down and you're not eating, and you don't eat for a long period of time. And I don't know exactly how long I was on a feeding tube. It was quite a while. But then I guess after 3 or 4 months, my body started to settle down and allowed me to gain a semblance of normality, which I think it's really like being reborn as a as a child again and having to learn everything different and new, except that your body is totally non-responsive to your wishes and your desires, and the way that it had been as far as mobility and um, capacity prior, all that was gone and everything was different. And I then had to use a wheelchair, for mobility, and had to learn everything anew. It was a very strange time for me, and being with all of these people that were going through the same thing. It was very trying. And so, really, those of you that have all of your capacity, that don't even have to contend with any kind of pain, um, that you have your full mobility and your every day as an opportunity to do whatever you choose, whatever you wish. You don't have to go through a routine just to get up to begin your day. You can just hop up and go. Um, why are you not living out your life fully? Why aren't you chasing down your dreams, accomplishing your goals? What is holding you back? What is in the way? What kind of excuse do you have for not doing what it is you always wanted to do? What's the dream that you've had since you were a young child, the thing that you always wished to do or wished to have opportunity and chance to do, but never did, but um, something got in the way, or somebody's opinion kept you from chasing down your dream? I mean, what is it that's holding you back? And is it worth it? I mean, is it, if you only had today, or if you only had this month or this week or this year, would you do something that you might not otherwise consider? And this also, goes to our loved ones, because I realized when I almost lost my life how very important family is, and how shallow sometimes differences are in the the conflicts or arguments that we have with one another. How so many will hold on to those things and allow them to drive a wedge between, and they will distance their relationships. And I realized how petty and insignificant a lot of things were. Um, that though, for people that think they have forever to live, how important we make those little things. And so, in this show, my present to you, my offering to you, is to learn from my my acquirement, my traumatic accident, my transition, my change, my forced reckoning. Well, I call it my forced meditation. The the whole challenge of my disability, of being placed and put where I am, to learn the lessons that I had to in hard way, um, without having to go through what I went through. To From the experience and the evaluation, and for the reassessment and reprioritizing of life and being, and the recognition of truth and what was important, that if you can take anything from what I've learned, and I'm also including this as far as relationship with God and with the kingdom and with truth, um, to reevaluate, reassess what's important in your life, and make choices and begin new patterns, new habits, new ways of being, which will either help you to accomplish something that you always wanted to do, or to acquire a different skill set to drive you in goal and take you to where you've always wanted to be. To not let anything hold you back, to not let anything that anybody says determine your worth and what you think you can do. Do not let anybody place a judgment on you which steals your motivation, or steals or diminishes your merit, your self worth. And to also, um, because this is another lesson that I had to learn too, but to learn to love yourself for who you are, and for things that are outside of your control, to not worry about those things, but to place your focus on those things which you can control and which you can make change, and can um, deviate and reposition patterns, behaviors, relationships with people and things, places, um, all those things. To Well, I just want, want you to understand how much freedom you have, how much how much of a blessing it is to have the full capacity as a human being, made in the image of God, to do, to create, to, I mean, we are co-creators with the Most High, and we have the chance to accomplish miracle with our focus and our intent, our determination, and how much of that is wasted by so many people just because they think they have to um, succumb and submit to the matrix and the fake goals and dreams that have been prioritized for people, for all of those that are born into this system, into this world, into this fallen state of being, and into this fallen world. And even though, yes, this is a place of duality, one where we learn through pain and suffering and aging, it is also a place of miracle being, um, and the creation, and our chance to be part of the manifest creation is such a huge blessing. And daily we have chance to do incredible things, to meet new people, to smile and laugh and share joy and love, and and really just enjoy the moment, enjoy being here, enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey, because that's what it's about. And I know so many of you are so ready to get home, as am I, and I'm so ready for a return to our first estate. But for the time being, while we're here, and before we are pulled out or raptured out of this place,